Every single night you die, and you don't even realize it. You close your eyes, drift into darkness, and surrender your body to stillness. The world around you disappears. Your identity dissolves. Time slips out from under you. You stop responding, your heart slows, your mind unplugs from reality. If someone watched you in that state, they might think you were gone, but you're not. You're somewhere else entirely, because while your body sleeps, your consciousness moves. It slips out quietly, leaving behind the physical world, and begins a journey of its own. A journey that ancient cultures understood, but modern science denies. The Tibetans knew it. The Egyptians mapped it. The Gnostics warned of it. And now it's been almost completely forgotten. But the truth is, this sleep is not a break from life. It's a rehearsal for death and your dreams. They're not fiction. They're the clues you've been ignoring. The only question is, are you ready to follow them? We've been taught to see sleep as the off switch, a passive state where the body shuts down and the mind goes quiet. It's where your brain sorts memories, files away information, and gives your muscles a few hours of downtime. That's the version science hands us, clean, clinical, manageable. But that's not what the ancient ones believed, according to the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Sleep isn't rest. It's a ritual. It's not an escape from the world. It's an entrance into another one, a world as real as this one, but hidden in plain sight. The Tibetans called it the BAU, the intermediate state, a space between life and death, between thought and form, between the known and the unknown, and every single night without fail. You enter it. You don't dream. Because your brain's bored, you dream. Because your consciousness is moving, shifting, traveling, and what the ancients knew, what they carved into scrolls and whispered across generations, is that the space you enter while asleep isn't just symbolic. It's spiritual territory, it's dimension, and it's the same terrain you'll cross when you die. That's why the Tibetans believed you should train for death every night, because if you wait until your final breath to figure it out, it's too late. But it wasn't just the Tibetans. The Egyptian Book of the Dead spoke of nightly journeys through the duet, the underworld, the land beyond the veil. The soul would face illusions, guardians' tests, the same trials it would meet in death. Sleep was a practice run, a symbolic descent into darkness, followed by rebirth at dawn. Gnostic writings echoed this, describing the soul as a prisoner of the physical world, one that escapes its cage during sleep to return to the higher realms. They believed this escape was a rebellion, a divine jailbreak, and the modern mystic Robert Monroe, decades later, would map out non-physical realms he visited through out-of-body experiences during sleep states. What he found echoed what the ancients had always said. Consciousness does not stay still. It moves, it travels, it returns to places the waking mind can't remember, but the soul never forgets. But why don't we remember these nightly voyages? Why do our dreams slip away the moment we wake? That's no accident. We've been trained to forget, programmed, to dismiss it, conditioned, to believe that sleep is meaningless and dreams and nonsense. Because if we truly understood what was happening, if we remembered, we'd start asking the one question the system can't afford. Who am I really? Some of the deepest details of these texts can't be shared publicly, but we break them down inside Insights Academy. It's a free newsletter, and for a limited time you'll also get a copy of the Callan. Just hit the link in the description. See, the real reason this knowledge is kept hidden isn't because it's dangerous, it's because it's liberating. You're not a body that dreams, you're a consciousness that occasionally wakes, and when you sleep you're not offline, you're off script. You've slipped out the side door of the simulation. You're stepping into a realm that's bigger than your senses, older than your body, and truer than your programming. And that's terrifying to anyone who profits from your obedience, because if you knew you really go when you sleep, if you remembered, you'd realize how small this world really is, and how much more there is waiting for you on the other side of sleep. Every time your head hits the pillow, you're rehearsing your own death. Not in some poetic, symbolic way, but quite literally. That's the heart of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, sleep. and death are twins, mirrored reflection of the same transition. To fall asleep is to die temporarily. To wake up is to be reborn. But while your body stays in bed, your consciousness moves through the same stages it will experience after death, only softer, quieter, less permanent. You're walking through the early corridors of the afterlife without even realizing it. According to the Tibetans, there are 6 BOS, 6 states of in-between, and the dream B is one of them. It's a space you enter every single night where you are no longer rooted in your physical form. Identity loosens, time distorts, reality becomes fluid, and yet you're still you, only stripped of all the lies. You tell yourself during the day in that space, what's buried comes up, fears become form, desires become landscapes, it's raw consciousness playing itself out like theater. This is why they treated dream practice like training, because when the final BAU comes, the moment of real death, most people panic. They don't recognize the terrain. They think it's chaos. But for those who've practiced, who've remembered, who've learned how to navigate the space in sleep, it's familiar. They know the traps. They know how to move toward the light. It's easy to dismiss this as poetic mysticism, until you realize that people across time and culture have been reporting the same things. The Egyptian Book of the Dead describes the soul passing through trials, illusions and gates. Each phase is a test, one of character, clarity and consciousness. Just like in dreams, what you fear becomes real. What you desire materializes. It's a realm where thoughts become architecture and your inner world becomes your outer environment. Centuries later, Robert Monroe, an engineer turned consciousness explorer, found himself accidentally slipping out of his body during sleep. What started as confusion became years of mapping the non-physical. He found realms of gray, shimmering voids, cities of thought, even beings who seemed as real as anyone he'd met in waking life. None of it felt like dreams. It felt like movement, deliberate, navigable, alive. And what he described sounded eerily similar to the ancient texts. A consciousness untethered but still alert, a journey through levels of existence far beyond what the brain could ever fabricate. This is why sleep matters more than rest, because every night you're being given a chance to practice something sacred, to get familiar with your own soul, to walk the map before the final trip. But most of us sleep like the dead and wake like amnesiacs. We stumble through our dreams, if we remember them at all, and never stop to ask, where did I just go? Who was I when I was there? Why did it feel more real than this? The truth is, we've been convinced that reality only exists while we're awake. But what if that's backwards? What if the dreams, the ones that jolt you awake, that feel like messages that leave you shaken, are the real data? What if they're telling you something vital and you've been trained to ignore it? The Tibetans didn't leave us this wisdom for poetry, they left it as instruction. Sleep isn't just a break from life, it's your opportunity to wake up to something greater, and the longer you pretend it's just random noise in the night, the more likely you'll be unprepared when the real B comes. Death isn't the end, it's just a continuation of the journey you've been practicing every night. We've been conditioned to think of consciousness as something locked inside the brain, a flickering byproduct of neurons firing in just the right pattern. You're told that when you sleep, it dims. When you die, it ends, that your thoughts, your dreams, your entire sense of self is just chemistry, electrical impulses in a lump of gray matter. But if that were true, why do so many people report vivid, coherent experiences during moments when the brain is medically inactive? Why do near-death survivors describe scenes, encounters, and landscapes more detailed than anything in waking life? Why do people who practice lucid dreaming or astral projection consistently visit the same kinds of spaces, meet the same kinds of entities, and experience the same kinds of truths? Because consciousness isn't made of matter. It's not born in the brain. It's just using the brain like a driver uses a car. When you sleep, that driver steps out. Consciousness detaches from the physical interface and begins to operate in its pure form. No senses, no body, no social masks, just awareness. And when you strip everything else away, that's all you are. Awareness, not a personality, not a name, not a job title, just a field of perception that observes, feels, and remembers. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes this awareness as a luminous clarity, untouched by the body or the senses. It exists before birth and continues after death during sleep. You get brief, fragmented access to it. That's what dreams are. That's why they can feel so real, so charged with emotion, so prophetic. You're not hallucinating. You're remembering what it's like to be untethered. Even in modern science, cracks are beginning to show in the old models. Quantum physicists now speak openly about consciousness being non-local, meaning it's not confined to the brain or the body. It might exist, like a field, a network, or a frequency that your physical self tunes into. This isn't fringe anymore. It's where physics and mysticism quietly shake hands behind the scenes. Robert Monroe's journeys support this. He didn't just drift. In dreams, he navigated levels. He spoke of frequencies, vibrational states, even coordinates in non-physical space. To him, consciousness was a vehicle. It could project, learn, and return. And the more he trained himself to observe it, the clearer his experiences became. He developed methods, he built maps, and he confirmed what ancient texts had been hinting at all along. We're not local creatures. We're multi-dimensional travelers playing a temporary game of being human. This is where things get uncomfortable, because if your consciousness doesn't sleep and it doesn't die, then what exactly are you doing here? What's the point of waking life? If the real action happens when your body is still, maybe life isn't the main event. Maybe it's the classroom. Maybe it's the training ground for what comes after, and maybe that's why sleep is so critical. Not because your body needs rest, but because your soul needs reminding. Every time you fall asleep, you return to yourself, not the version you wear during the day, but the raw, unedited essence of who you are. And sometimes in the right conditions, you remember. You wake up in a dream, you hear something, you see someone you recognize, a place you've never visited before, and you just know you've been there. And that's when the illusion begins to crack. There's a reason you can't remember where you go at night. It's not just poor memory or bad sleep hygiene. It's deeper than that, older, more deliberate. You've been taught to forget, not just by your biology, but by your culture, your upbringing, your education. From the moment you could describe your dreams, you were told they didn't matter. It was just a dream. They said, don't worry about it. And slowly you stopped asking questions. You stopped writing them down. You stopped believing they had meaning at all. But what if that was the point? Dreams are dangerous to systems that thrive on control, because a dreaming mind is a liberated one. It goes where it wants, it breaks rules. It remembers past lives. It questions time. It meets the dead. It lives outside the laws of gravity, money, politics, and physics. And in that space, free from boundaries, you begin to remember who you really are, not just a consumer, a citizen, or a personality. You remember yourself as a soul, and nothing scares the system more than a soul that remembers as a child. Your dreams were vivid, untamed, often terrifying. You'd wake up sweating, crying, asking your parents what it all meant. But over time, the color faded, the edges blurred. School told you to focus on real-life media, fed you fantasy to distract from the truths. Your inner world was trying to show you, and slowly, night after night, you were taught not just to sleep, but to sleep. Walk through your own inner reality. Even though language around dreams is dismissive, we say dreaming like it's naive. Stop dreaming, they tell you get real. But what if dreaming is more real than waking? What if the dreams you have, the ones you can't explain, that feel older than this life, are windows into something ancient? What if they're memories not of your past, but of your essence? The Gnostics spoke of this forgetting, They said, we are sparks of divine consciousness trapped in material bodies, and that our forgetfulness is part of the trap. The physical world is a prison, not just of form, but of memory. Every night they believed the soul attempts to ascend to reunite with truth, but few remember it. Why? Because forgetting is the first step of control. If you forget your power, you won't use it. If you forget the other realms, you won't seek them. If you forget what it means to be infinite, you'll live like you're disposable, and that's the condition of the modern world, people chasing meaning in things they can touch, buy, and measure, while ignoring the dimensions they visit. Nightly, people are taught to fear death, even though they've died 1,000 times in sleep and come back. We spend billions trying to extend life, but almost nothing understanding the one we live when our eyes are closed. The irony is brutal. You've likely had glimpses of the truth, or already moments where a dream hit too hard. A figure in the dream spoke directly to your soul. A place felt achingly familiar. A sensation reminded you of something you never learned, but somehow always knew. But you woke up, shrugged it off, and went about your day. And that's how the forgetting works. You are not broken because you can't remember. You are not weak because you don't lucid dream or travel PLS at will. The system made forgetting normal. It made sleep about silence instead of revelation. But underneath that conditioning, the memory is still there. Your soul hasn't forgotten. It's just waiting for you to start listening again. They told you your dreams were random, just leftover static from the day. Strange symbols with no real meaning, but if that were true, why do some dreams haunt you for years? Why do some feel more vivid than anything in your waking life? Why do you sometimes wake up crying, laughing, terrified, or at peace without knowing why? Because deep down you already know the truth. Your dreams are trying to tell you something. Ancient cultures never dismissed dreams as noise. They treated them as sacred communication. The Egyptians had dream temples where initiates would fast and meditate, hoping to receive divine messages in their sleep. The Greeks had incubation chambers. The Tibetans practiced dream yoga, and indigenous peoples across the globe still treat dreams as spiritual tools, ways to connect with ancestors, receive guidance, and heal what can't be healed in waking life. Carl Jung called dreams the royal road to the unconscious, but even that falls short, because your dreams don't just reflect they reveal your essence. They show you who you are beneath the roles, beyond the stories, and if you pay attention, they become a map. Symbols, archetypes, patterns, they repeat for a reason. Not because you're broken, but because your soul is trying to get a message through the noise, and every time you ignore that message, it just gets louder. You've probably had the recurring dream, the hallway that never ends, the falling, the teeth crumbling, the stranger who feels familiar. These aren't glitches, they're signals. Your mind may not understand them, but your deeper self does. That's why some dreams leave you shaken. That's why you wake up with your heart pounding, even if nothing scary happened, because it wasn't a story. It was a transmission, and your body remembered what your mind forgot. There's a language beneath language, a dream logic that doesn't obey grammar or linear time. A place where a door isn't just a door, it's an opportunity. A storm isn't just weather, it's transformation. A stranger isn't a stranger at all, but an aspect of you that's been waiting to speak. The more you learn to interpret this language, the more your dreams shift. They become clearer, more structured, more insistent. You move from being a passive observer to an active participant. And when that happens, you start to notice something strange. Your dreams start responding to you. You ask a question, you get an answer you seek, and the mirror shifts. But here's the part they don't teach you in school. This language is personal. There's no universal dictionary. The lion in your dream doesn't mean the same thing as mine, because your dreams don't come from outside. They come from the very center of your being. They use your memories, your fears, your hopes as symbols. That's why dream interpretation apps and books feel flat. They're trying to decode your soul with someone else's cipher. Instead, the work is this: start tracking, write them down, look for patterns, notice how you feel. Not just what you see. Dreams speak in emotion, first image, second logic, last. And sometimes they don't speak. They sing, they echo, they press. You won't always understand them immediately. But if you keep listening, something starts to shift. You begin to notice when you're being guided, when a dream is just a dream, and when it's something else entirely. Because yes, some dreams aren't yours. Some are visitations, some are echoes from other lifetimes, some are messages from beings that don't speak in words but find you in sleep. Because that's when your defenses are down, that's when the veil is thin, and that's when you're most receptive to the truth. Your dreams are not fiction, they're messages from the part of you that still remembers who you are and why you're here. You just have to be willing to listen. Most people drift into sleep like it's a switch being flipped one moment, awake the next. Unconscious, gone, and that's exactly how the system wants it, because when you approach sleep like a black back out, you forfeit one of the most powerful tools you've ever had: conscious access to the deeper parts of yourself. But it doesn't have to be that way. Sleep can be more than recovery. It can be reclamation, a nightly return to your soul's inner terrain. And the first step is this: you have to start waking up inside the dream. Lucid dreaming isn't just a party trick or spiritual novelty. It's an ancient discipline. The Tibetans called it milam, or dream yoga. They didn't pursue lucidity for fun. They used it to train consciousness, to rehearse liberation, because the dream world, just like the bardo, responds to awareness. And when you bring your awareness into that space, everything changes. Fear can be faced. Desires can be examined. Past lives can be remembered. And the illusion that you are just this body, just this personality, begins to collapse. You've likely already had glimpses of lucidity. Those moments where something in the dream felt off and you suddenly realized, wait, this isn't real. Maybe you even tried to fly, maybe the colors got brighter, maybe you woke up too soon. That wasn't a fluke, that was you slipping through the cracks in the veil, and you can train that. You can grow it, you can use it. It begins with intention before you sleep. Tell yourself you will remember. Tell yourself you will become aware. Write it down if you need to. Not because the words are magic, but because you are your consciousness responds to repetition. It notices focus, and when you begin to take sleep seriously as you take your waking goals, it begins to respond in kind. Keep a dream journal by your bed. The most you wake, write down whatever fragments. You remember names, shapes, colors, emotions, even if it doesn't make sense. Especially if it doesn't make sense, you are teaching your waking mind to value what your dreaming mind has to say. And the more you do that, the stronger the bridge becomes. Throughout the day, ask yourself if you're dreaming seriously. Look at your hands, look at a clock, ask, am I dreaming right now? Do it often enough, and eventually you'll do it in the dream too. That's the moment everything clicks. That's when the background noise becomes a canvas, and you're no longer a passenger, you're a navigator. But this isn't about control for its own sake. It's about healing. Lucid dreams allow you to confront your fears in symbolic form, to speak with the aspects of yourself you've buried, to re-enter traumatic memories and bring light to them, to test choices, to ask questions, to explore corners of your psyche. Untouched by logic, you can meet mentors, you can encounter the dead. You can find yourself standing in places that don't exist on any map, but feel more like home than anywhere you've ever been. You begin to remember not just your dreams, but something older, a deeper rhythm, a truth that runs beneath everything. You start to realize that you are not just dreaming at night. You've been dreaming through your entire waking life too, trapped in beliefs, habits, fears. And that the process of becoming lucid in your sleep is inseparable from becoming lucid in your life. Because the goal isn't just to wake up in the dream. It's to wake up everywhere, to reclaim your power, not just at night, but every moment, to walk through this world like you know who you are and where you came from, and to never again mistake sleep for surrender. There are places you've been that don't exist on any map, worlds you've walked that don't belong to this dimension, landscapes made of thought, emotion, and pure vibration. You've touched them even if you don't remember. Because when the body sleeps, the soul travels, and where it goes is not random. It's a system, a structure, a map of non-physical reality that's been whispered through ancient texts and echoed in modern exploration. And the more you begin to wake up inside the dream, the more you realize you're not just dreaming, you're journeying through realms beyond. Waking, the Tibetan teachings describe the bardo's intermediate states between death and rebirth. But one of those bardos is entered nightly during sleep. This isn't a metaphor, it's literal. The BAU is a real space of mind, where thoughts take form and awareness creates reality, and each night you pass through layers of it. Some nights it's chaotic, dark, distorted. Other nights it's radiant, lucid, filled with light and symbols you've never seen before. These aren't just reflections of your psyche. They're dimensions of experience that exist independently of your biology. Robert Rowe, who spent decades exploring altered states, mapped out what he called locals beyond the physical world. His experiences weren't like dreams, they were immersive, interactive, consistent. He returned to the same places, encountered the same types of beings, documented entire cities, schools, and energy systems that seemed to operate with laws different from our own. He described areas close to the physical where souls linger, confused, unprepared, clinging to unresolved attachments. He described layers beyond that, zones of learning, healing, even creation. These realms weren't fantasy, they were structure. They had boundaries, they had rules, and they mirrored what the ancients had said all along. The Egyptians spoke of the duat, an underworld of trial and transformation, where the soul navigates different gates and be beings reflecting its own inner landscape. In these traditions, the afterlife isn't a single place. It's a continuum, a layered, responsive matrix that reflects the vibrational state of your consciousness. And you don't enter it for the first time when you die. You've already been there, in your dreams, in your trances, in those strange moments between sleep and wake when your body is still, but your awareness is floating. Each realm you pass through is shaped not by geography but by frequency. Fear drops you into the heavy layers, nightmares, stuck loops, shadow realms. Clarity raises you into the lucid spaces, expansive, luminous, deeply peaceful. And the scary part, most people never move past the lower realms because they never learned how, because no one taught them that their state of mind determines their destination. That death is just a magnifying glass. It doesn't change your essence, it reveals it. That's why dream work isn't fluff. It's survival training for the soul. It's preparation, it's navigation. The more you practice presence in your dreams, the more conscious you become in those realms, and the more conscious you become, the more choice you have. You're no longer pulled around by fear or confusion. You can move, you can learn, you can choose what comes next. This is why people across centuries devoted their lives to dream training, not for entertainment, but for freedom. Because they knew something we've forgotten, that this life is not the end, and the next stage doesn't begin with death. It begins with awareness. The moment you realize you're more than flesh, more than sleep, more than memory, that's the moment the map appears and suddenly everything makes sense. You've been here before, not metaphorically, literally, and the more you remember, the more you reclaim what's always been yours, the right to explore, the right to choose, the right to awaken beyond the body, beyond the veil, beyond the illusion that this is all there is. The reason you've never been taught any of this is simple. Awake people are hard to control, and someone who understands where their conscious business goes at night, someone who's experienced life beyond the physical, is not going to be satisfied being another cog in a machine. They won't blindly obey. They won't fear death. They won't spend their life chasing status or possessions because they've touched something deeper, and systems built on fear and obedience can't survive in the presence of that kind of awareness. So the truth had to be buried. This isn't a new trick. Throughout history, the people who remembered the nature of the soul, who understood that reality extended beyond the material, were silenced, mocked, or killed. The mystics, the dreamers, the seers, they were called witches, heretics, and lunatics, not because they were wrong, but because they were right. In a way that threatened the entire order, their dreams spoke too loudly. Their truths couldn't be quantified. Their visions didn't fit the narrative, and so over generations we were taught to forget the dream. Realms were reduced to fiction. The afterlife was simplified into reward or punishment. Sleep was reframed as maintenance, not mystery, and anyone who dared to explore those inner landscapes was labeled unstable or delusional. But here's the thing. The suppression wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Because when you don't know who you really are, when you forget that you are a soul with access to infinite realms, you become easier to manage. You stay in your lane. You work the job. You take the pills. You follow the script. Religions told you the afterlife was reserved for later science, told you there's nothing after this, and the media told you that dreams are just your brain making noise. 3 pillars of culture, each pointing in a different direction but also saying the same thing. Don't look too closely, don't go too far in, don't question the script. And you listened, not because you're blind, but because you were never given another option. But now you know better. Or at least now you suspect, and suspicion is the beginning of memory. Because once you've seen even a glimpse of the truth once, a dream lingers too long, or an experience breaks the rules of waking life, you can't unsee it. You start to notice the cracks, you start to remember the places between the places, the strange familiarity of a landscape you've never visited, the feeling that something is calling you, but not from this world. The reason this truth is hidden is because it's powerful, and not in some abstract spiritual sense, actually powerful. It changes how you live. It removes the fear that keeps you in line. It gives you authority over your own experience. It breaks the illusion that this world has the final say. That's what systems fear most, not rebellion, not protest, but internal liberation. A soul that knows how to travel is a soul that knows how to think, and a soul that knows how to think won't sit quietly in a cage. It can leave at will when you begin to remember your nightly journeys, when you reclaim your right to explore those in-between realms, as you become dangerous, not because you're violent, but because you're free, and freedom real. Freedom doesn't start with changing the world outside. It starts with remembering the one inside, the one you visit every night, the one that's always been waiting for you. You don't need to learn how to dream. You need to remember that you already know. You've walked these realms before, through lifetimes, through nights, through moments. You couldn't explain but never forgot the familiarity you feel in dreams. Isn't coincidence. It's recognition. It's the soul brushing against a place it once called home every night. When the world goes quiet and your body goes still, that door reopens, and on the other side isn't fiction. It's you, unfiltered, unbound, and awake, in ways the waking world never taught you to be. The truth is you've never stopped traveling, you've just stopped paying attention, you've dismissed your dreams, laughed off the symbols, ignored the synchronicities, because the world told you that. Real life only happens when the sun is up and the bills are due. But real life doesn't care about your clocks and calendars. Real life speaks in riddles, whispers in images, dances in metaphors, and the part of you that's always known how to hear. The ancient part, the dreaming part, it's still here, still waiting. You don't need to become anything new. You just need to shed what was placed on top of you. The roles, the distractions, the programming, the belief that sleep is for rest, not revelation. The idea that your value comes from your productivity, not your presence. The fear that what you see in your dreams might be real. because deep down you already know it is, and that terrifies the part of you that still clings to the illusion of control. But there's another part of you, the part that remembers, the part that has stood at the edge of a dream and known without logic that it mattered, the part that has wept upon waking because it left something behind, the part that has heard a voice, felt a presence, or stood in a place that can't exist but somehow does. That's the real you. That's the consciousness behind the curtain, and it's time to let it speak. You were never meant to sleep through your life. You were meant to awaken inside it, not just in the daytime routines, but in the realms behind the eyes, the space where death is rehearsed, where karma is met, where purpose is revealed. You were meant to remember not just what you've forgotten, but who forgot you. Because if you've read this far, it means something in you is waking up, and once that part stirs, there's no going back. The old way of living, drifting, complying, forgetting, it won't satisfy you anymore because you've touched something real, and realness doesn't let you sleep easy once you've seen it. That's why the dreaming path isn't a hobby. It's a calling, a deep, wordless pull to explore the realms. They told you not to. Not because they're dangerous, but because they're liberating. If this resonated, don't miss the next step. Sign up for Insights Academy and get a free copy of the Kybalion. It's a glimpse into the hidden teachings that can't be found anywhere else. But none of this will matter unless you understand what's really happening when your consciousness leaves the body. Click the video you see right here. It's the missing piece. They don't want you to know. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."